And welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. I'm your host, Nathaniel Giovanniopoulos, and today on the show we have Shane Evans. How are you doing today, Shane?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's a pleasure. We're definitely excited to have you on here today. I know a little bit about you from the real estate investing community under Pace Morby, but we're going to find out exactly more of what's going on behind your story and what exactly it is you're doing so that people can reach out to you and see what they can do to help or maybe be helped by you. So why don't you go ahead and start by telling us what inspired you to get into real estate investing?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. That brings it back to being a kid. My family had a 4-unit property until I was 2, I think I lived there. And then we moved to a 2-unit. So my father always had something going on. There was a time of turmoil in my life around age 7 or 8 when we lost that other property, because there was miscommunication between who was collecting rent and doing what. And we also lost some other property that we had. We had a camp up in New York where we always used to go and visit. So it was definitely something I was around my whole life in some way, shape, or form. But after those 2 things were lost, it was never tried again, right? So we had this 2-unit that turned into a single family that we just lived in, as soon as we got to teenage years. So it really wasn't part of my life too much until my wife and I were looking for a house. And I was like, well, if someone else is going to pay the bills, we might as well get a multifamily and have them pay for it. So we bought our first 2-unit property, and it was set up to have actually up to 4 units technically, but the town didn't approve it, kind of situation. So
okay, kind of like a permit kind of a thing.
Yeah, like with 2 unfinished spaces, right? And it was not zoned for the right thing. So luckily, unbeknownst to me, the housing department came and gave me a phone call, and they're like, hey, we noticed that we're changing our systems to digitize it. We noticed you had a 3rd unit registered. Did you still want that? And it was the fastest $52 and drive I ever did. I was like, here you go, take my money. And so we were able to add a 3rd unit to the property, which was outstanding. And yeah, so we have that 3-unit there, and that's how we got into the real estate side. I was a teacher. I taught for about 13 years or so. And when I finished up, I decided, or when I was on my way out because of getting into real estate, I've noticed that, I needed to go all in on something in order to thrive. I couldn't do this half measure. So I put some money away. I was able to get paid through the summer that year, and then went full throttle into it. Started out by wanting to buy multifamilies with a partner of mine, and then ended up switching to wholesaling for a while, getting stuck in a little rabbit hole there, and then realized that that's not what I should have been doing. So I'm back to buying multifamily. So it's been a good ride, and a lot of mindset stuff, which I know you've gone through a lot of that as well for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny the things you take for granted when you don't know things. Yeah. But you said that you were a teacher. What kind of education were you doing?
Yeah, so I taught everything from I taught all the tech classes. So when you said CNC machinist, I taught CAD, I taught 3D modeling, I taught CNC classes, I taught automotive, architecture, digital media, video, HVAC, welding, plumbing, electrical. That's where I ended my career in a tech center. So I taught a lot of different things throughout that time, but it was considered tech ed or industrial arts, depending on how you look at it, or career tech. And it was a fantastic world, but it was time to go. The not having control of my day to day was a little bit unsettling.
Yeah, I get that. I work nights myself right now. I think I've been on nights for about 9 years now.
Wow.
So I think it might be catching up to me, but that's okay. We're just going to keep plugging away until we figure things out. And then it's going to be interesting. Very cool that you had some experience with things when you were a kid. A little bit of a story for our listeners from my side of things is that my parents actually attempted to do real estate when I was a kid, but their very first tenant that they got did over $17,000 worth of damage in the first 3 weeks that they had them in there.
Wow.
And so they kind of dropped that, and I never really thought about it again until recently. But sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. I think the important thing is to just keep trying until you learn what works.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, cool. Looks like you have a pretty decent background for that with the multifamily. I'd like to know, did you run into anything that really was like a huge problem for you? I mean, I mentioned my parents had that issue and it kind of turned them off from things. Did you have anything that may have happened that in that fashion that could have driven you away if you hadn't been full in, like you mentioned?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are very particular about how we vet people before we let them into our units, right? That's the biggest thing, right? And we currently, with that multifamily we still have, we are still in charge of that. Like we haven't passed that off to anyone just yet. It's not cash flowing in the way that it needs to in order to just let someone else run that.
Mm.
So we're very intentional about who we bring in where, right? And how that's done. So that's part of the reason why we haven't had any issues. Like we've had some amazing tenants. The worst was someone, stumbled on the staircase and put his elbow through the wall by accident, and then tried to patch it up with. He went to Home Depot and he picked up. He said that, yeah, I have a hole in the wall and blah blah blah. And they're like, what kind of building? He's like, oh, it's like a brick building. Blah, blah. Like not knowing what the question was, I'm pretty sure. And they gave him a concrete patch kit instead of a drywall patch kit. So
Oh,
he went and tried to patch it, and I'm like, what is this? He goes, what, is that not right? I'm like, what do you mean is that not right? Does it look right? It's great. It was great. But intentions were wonderful. But that was the only thing we've done. Something that could have gotten pretty messy pretty quick was when we first started, my partner and I at the time, we were looking at an 8-unit property here in Vermont. I live in Vermont. And the landlord rules and tenant rules are very favorable to the tenants. And this 8-unit had some problem tenants that were a little bit hard to work with. So we almost bought it, but instead decided to wholesale it. And it was probably the best move we made because there was a drug dealer in there. There were tenants that were living in squalor. There were, someone with mental health issues, which nothing wrong with that. It's just we were not equipped for all of that.
yeah.
A lot of things going on in that building. It was a beautiful building, but I think that would have sucked away a lot of our time and energy if we purchased that building. So that was as close as I came to that kind of a thing.
Okay. I'm sure there are people that have the good experience and the background that can handle that better too. That's always the interesting thing that I've learned about real estate is that things that might not be right for your bucket are right for other people's.
Yes.
And it turns out if you know enough people, you can kind of shuffle things around to where it works for everybody.
Yep. And that's exactly what happened for us. So we had that property ended up going to a wonderful person, and she basically is there now, and we're working on it now. And she's like, in that little community, everyone says hi to her now. She lives 3 hours away, but she was there so much and working with people so much to get this place up and running, to get the shady people out, to make the community better, that she's like a celebrity in town. It was pretty funny.
Hey, that's fun.
Yeah, really cool.
Good that it turned out the way it did. I like that.
Exactly.
All right. Well, how about on the opposite end of the spectrum? Has there been anything that have been like really cool that happened that were really beneficial or just went extremely right from the get-go?
Yeah. So one of the things I already told you about the third unit thing. That was one of the biggest. Oh my man, that's awesome. One of the biggest things for me, and it was very intentional, was finding a partner that I meshed with really, really well, and doing that. And I think a lot of us in the real estate entrepreneurial side of things, we don't realize that we're running a business, not just this extra hobby thing, right? So a lot of us aren't trained to understand how businesses function, where you need an operations person. You need just look at the business you work for, your W-2, right? There's scales and there's levels of people to do the higher level things versus the hands-on versus the next, right? And if you look at your business as you're doing all of it, you wouldn't be able to work for the manufacturing company you work for if you were the only person there, right? It wouldn't be as successful as it is. You need to really think about, what systems do I need to put in place? Who do I need to put in place as an operator or as a partner? And so I partnered up with someone who our values align to an unbelievable level. We had our values meeting when we first started working together about a month in, when we were talking about, we did our dating period, and we both laughed because all of our values were like we have 5 values we each talked about, and I let her go first. And her name is Marley Tarbo, and she's just phenomenal. She used to work in mergers and acquisitions for a fintech company, and our values were the same. Like, maybe a different word used, but it was the same, and it was pretty amazing to see that alignment with someone, and to know like that they've got the skill set that I don't have, and I've got the skill set that they don't have, and to bring those two things together in a way that really pulls the entire system together. And I know that I can walk away from the business for a week, 2 weeks, a month if I needed to, and she would have the reins and it would be no problem. She'll step into that role, and vice versa. I'll step into the operations role and do all the back end stuff as needed. And we both know that. And that's the thing that's really been special. And part of that is I like to educate people on this type of stuff, is partnerships and growing your business as a business, not just as a real estate growth, a real estate investment company. It's a full-on business.
No, I like that. That's interesting. I've heard the perspective a little bit before, but as maybe somebody who looks at this as a mixture between a new business and the hobby that you mentioned, I think one of the things that I wonder is, how do you go about finding that person? Or how do you go about figuring out how to compensate them for their time and their efforts?
That's a great question. So there's, depending on what you're looking for, right? So if you are we talk about two roles, right? You talk about the CEO and then the COO. So you've got your executive officer, which is the vision, and then you've got your operations person, which might be someone who integrates things, right? And a lot of times people, if you've read what's that book, Rocket,
Called Rocket Fuel.
Thank you, Rocket Fuel. If you've read that book, they talk about integrators and visionaries, right? Mm-hmm. And I think people get confused when someone says, I'm an integrator, right? It's not always that. They could be a technology-based integrator, or they can be an operations person, right? And so depending on who you are and where you are, what role you're in, some of you listening might be listening because you are the operator, or you are the technical person, or you might be listening and you're the visionary, right? So finding your opposite piece, you really need to know what you're looking for. And for me, I know that the first thing was I needed to find out my values. I needed to know what I was doing and why I was doing it. Because if I didn't, it's not, all the money in the world isn't going to mean jack if I don't have a purpose or a rationale or a reason.
Can't drag yourself out of bed in the morning, right?
Right. And like and there's 3 things I like to talk about is, we all do it for the money, right? That's part one. It's okay, cool. You do it for the money, but there's more to that, right? I'm doing it for my family. Okay, cool. You want your family to be able to survive, and you want them to have some money afterwards when you're gone. But in reality, you're doing it for a legacy, right? This is the time in your life that you're allowed to be selfish, because it's bigger than you, right? Yeah. And by being selfish, you're actually giving so much. You're being less selfish in the end, because now I'm providing this for my family. I'm creating this wealth for my family, but I'm also creating impact on other people's lives, jobs, housing, whatever it is. And if you get into that mindset before you try to partner with someone, and you understand where you're trying to go and what you have to bring to the table, that's a big one that I think a lot of people don't understand. My partner, when I found my partner, it took a good 2 weeks of just every single day for pretty much 5-6 hours a day, looking up posts, having conversations with people, making posts, DMing people directly, because I saw that, like, I went in the communities that I'm part of, and I saw, this person's an integrator. So I messaged the amount of people I messaged that said, that I said, hey, are you an integrator? And they'd be like, no, I'm a visionary. I'm looking for one, though. The amount of people that happened, because like they had the word integrator in their thing. I was like, oh, sorry, but like if I find one, I'll let you know. And I just kept going, right?
Gotcha.
And as I had those conversations, I was super intentional about telling them what I have available and why they should partner with me, and saying, this is what I'm looking for. This is who you are, and being super intentional about that. And adding in my values, right? As part of that, a small piece of that was values, like making sure to bring value to the world is essentially what my last line was. But a lot of people just send out a post and think that the algorithm on Facebook or whatever is going to just make it happen. It's not. It doesn't like us unless you follow its rules, right? I just got banned from my own community that I run. I can't make a post in my own community because I broke community rules by putting a link to my Zoom page, my Zoom call.
Oh, wow.
Like what? So it's an interesting world. But I bring that up because when I found Marley, I sent her a message directly, and I was very intentional about what I needed, what I had. And the reason why she answered was because every other quote unquote visionary just wanted to hand off everything they wanted to.
Okay.
Right. And so you really need to understand what you're bringing to the table and show them that you have value, but also don't just, like, if you want to hire someone, that's a different conversation, right? That's if you want to partner with someone, salary is different, right? It's when we make money, we both make money, right? When we don't make money, we both starve, right? So there's that piece, but then there's also, let's say you want to hire someone, and that's totally a great step to do as well. You want to hire an operations person to do all the underwriting, to do all the finding deals and vetting deals or whatever it is. You can go ahead onto Indeed and make a post and do a commission-based salary, right? And just say, like, you get paid and you eat when we do, right? It's how it works. It's based on performance. So there's different ways to go about doing it. And depending on what you're looking for, I recommend one of those two options. The Indeed one, you're going to have to skim through probably like 300 applications. You put a post out, it's 300 applications, easy. And then after that, you got to narrow it down to the top, 5 or 10 and decide. And if they're not the right person out of those 10, repost and start over, because
Gotcha.
You're going to date someone for 90 days. And I'd rather spend an extra week than rush into something that I may not work and I have a bad feeling about it and just give it a try, right? But if I don't align, if I don't want to have you in my backyard, I don't want to do business with you. If we're not going to have a barbecue tomorrow for 4th of July, like I don't want to work with you. It's just not going to happen.
Okay. No, I can see why you do that. I mean, I guess that goes back to what you're talking about, intention, right? I'm actually reminded of something. I think it was Pace said that fuzzy targets don't get hit. And so if you're unclear about the person you're looking for or the things that you need them to do, then they're going to come in. They're going to be like, okay, well, that's not what I typically do. You want to train me? Or maybe there's a person that's abrasive in their personality when it comes to yours. Or like, I could see all kinds of things that would go wrong. So it's interesting that you say that. I like that you gave us some numbers as well to kind of get an idea of what the process is going to look like for hiring somebody, or for how many people you're going to have to talk to before you find someone that clicks. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add one more thing to that, because something that it was the first time I've ever done this. As a teacher, I'm not allowed to kick anyone out of my class, right? It's not allowed. I'm stuck. So having the authority and the autonomy, really, to, when I started talking with people, they're like, I'm an integrator. Cool. Tell me what deals you've done so far. Tell me, how are you with underwriting? Can you do X, Y, and Z? And like a lot of times I'd be like, oh, well, I'm new and I'm learning how to underwrite, but I can learn quick. And I'm like, sorry, but no thanks, right? That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who knows what they're doing. Like Marley, her post, the way I found her was I looked back 2 years worth of posts and found her from 2 years prior. She said, I'm an integrator. I can help you with your system. I was like, all right, cool. And I knew, because she posted that 2 years ago, she now has experience. She understands the process. And now today she was ready to move on from her W-2 and do this full time. And so being super selective is okay. And you're allowed to be selfish again, because you want to thrive. You don't want to waste your time.
Okay. I like that. It's a very good tip. All right. Well, I guess, where's your business right now? What's the future look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So because of Marley's background and because of my skill sets, which are bringing people together is my skill set, and basically finding the missing pieces and giving direction. That's where I fit in. That's the visionary side that I can do. And I can get things started. I can get momentum and then go, okay, someone else take over. So that's what Marley ends up doing. I'm like, all right, here's all the pieces of the puzzle. I don't know how to get to the end result, but your brain works this way, so build us a map, right? And then I'll find whatever missing pieces you need to build that out. You just tell me, right? Marley, her skill set is in mergers and acquisitions. She was part of a fintech company, like I mentioned, and she's grown businesses to very high levels of revenue, and seed money and Series C. What's it called? Capital raises and things like that. So she has a very good background in that. So what we're focusing on, I looked at our goals when I first met up with her, and our goals are to be at 100,000 a month by the end of this year. And so what we need to do in order to do that is to skip going for small little buildings, because we could do that over and over and over and over and over again and build an entire system out. Or I can go for one big multifamily and go for, aim for 20 or 30 of them and end up with one, or aim for 100 of them and then end at one. And then we're also doing mergers and acquisitions for businesses. So we're looking at businesses that are already cash flowing, and now we can take that cash flow and put them back into these smaller real estate deals that take a little more effort, but it's now easier because we have cash flow to do so. So we're buying businesses, optimizing them, and then holding on to them for the bigger picture of like doing roll-ups and bolt-on type of acquisitions.
Okay. Well, for the listeners, I'd take note of that. If you have a business that's cash flowing that you're looking to, unload and sell, reach out to Shane. Maybe he'll be able to do something with that. And then same thing for people that are looking to sell their multifamily units. So help this guy out and help him get to his goal of $100,000 a month. That's pretty hefty, but pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an ambitious one, but you got to aim 10x in order to get halfway. I'm okay with getting halfway, right? I'd rather aim too big and cut short than not aim big enough and be like, oh, I still didn't make it to that little goal, right?
Yeah. I like the quote that says, "Aim for the moon. If you miss, you'll land amongst the stars."
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good thing to go. I don't know if I'll ever make $1 million. I'm working on it, trying to become the person that's capable of doing that. But it's been a joyful journey. I've really enjoyed learning all these new things over the last year or so, and I'm optimistic we're going to see where things go. Yeah. So if you guys need to figure out how to contact Shane, he has shared his social media handles here for us. I'm going to post that to the screen. You can find him on several of the different social media platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, under Shane Eddie Evans. And so reach out to him, send him a direct message, and he'll be able to talk to you guys about the opportunities that he has and do some work together. So, hey, Shane, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And I was kind of curious, do you have any questions for me before we part ways today?
Yeah. One of the things when you mentioned that you're hoping to get there one day, and I've based on your story and what you've talked about with me, like I can see the growth, right? Like I can see the person you were, even though I didn't know you then. As a teacher, I could see kids from freshman year to senior year, and I was able to see the progression of getting more confident and getting more in tune with knowing that they are the person that is capable of whatever they're aiming for, right? And I see that happening for you, and I can tell that it's this growth is impactful for you just based on your story, based on the conversation you told me about your wife talking about like the review, right? And that is key, right? Looking back instead of forward.
Yeah.
And have you read The Gap and the Gain yet?
I have not. I'll write that down. The Gap and the Gain.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal book. And for those of you who want to know the concept listening, it's a lot of times we're always looking ahead, like the future, like, oh, I have to get to this thing. I'm aiming for this thing. And yeah, you can still aim for that. But if you're looking at the gap of where you're not, to where you haven't gotten to yet, it's 6 months in, I haven't gotten here. But if you look backwards at the gain, the things that you've gained in the past 6 months, man, that turning around and looking back changes the whole perspective, because the growth that you've done shows and proves that you're getting closer to that piece, even though it still feels so far away. So
yeah, like I mentioned to you before we got on the call today, the fact that I did that and realized how much personal development that I've gone through, and it's been a crazy ride, and I'm excited to see the continued growth that I'm going to be able to make. One of the other challenges that we went through is the fact that my wife and I, we couldn't have kids for a good 8.5 years. And so we really struggled with that because, like I mentioned, one of the only two things that I wanted out of life was to be a father. And so we luckily managed to have a little boy. He's going to be turning 2 in about 3 weeks.
Congratulations.
So that's been exciting. And
That
that's really kind of why we do these things, is for those people in our life that are important, and to leave something behind that will benefit them as we continue on. But I sure appreciate you coming on the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'd love to be able to find out if there's some other way that I can help you with things as I continue to grow and progress. So we'll make sure that we keep in touch. And if anybody has any questions for either me or Shane, be sure to reach out to us on our social media handles. And remember to subscribe and follow so you can hear more episodes. And I'd love to hear questions from the audience so that we can answer them in future episodes. So this has been the Pot of Gold podcast. We focus on learning how to manage our finances, wealth generation, real estate investing, and pretty much anything to do with business that might be able to help us improve our lives and the lives of others. So thanks for tuning in, and you all have a very good day now.
Thank you.